Hello, hello. My name is John, and I'm here with Bjorn, and we're going to do a little introduction to Svelte today. What we can do in 30 minutes. So take it away, Bjorn.
Right. So there's two different ways you can start a project, depending on your temperament. You can either download this file and then run install on that file, or you can, like with create React app, you can pass in a console command. So it's npx digits veltjs and template. And then the name, let's just do app. Go. So need to install first. Like you would normally do with the dependencies and modules and all that. So compared to React, this is very fast. As you can see, it's already done. You need to wait several minutes for React to be done. Right. So let's just open this in VS Code. This is your project, just like usually do. You have a source folder. The main.js is the entry point where it sort of it compiles all. It puts all the different components and parts in, just like you know and love from React. So it's very similar. Yeah. This is the entry component. This is the main component. Let's start it up, see what it says. So instead of start, you go run development. Of course, you can also run build, but that's not for now. There we go. Start up at port 5000. And this is what you see. Now, let's just get rid of all this. So there's three main parts to a Svelte component. You have the script, which is all your JavaScript. You have the style, which is all your styling specific to this component, meaning it doesn't bleed into other components. The style that you put here can only ever affect the style, the HTML components of this document, this file, which is very useful, I guess, because you can always do a CSS document anyway.
Yeah.
Right, and then you have the whatever or the HTML components.
Yeah. And this is just raw HTML. We don't even write it in a div or anything like that. And you can actually put it anywhere in the document.
Yes.
You can reorder this document however you want. You can only have one script and one style tag.
Yeah.
But you can write HTML around it. Obviously, yeah, it works, but it's not really good.
No,
great practice.
It's bad practice.
Yeah. The standard is to put script at the top, style afterwards, and then HTML after that. Prettier will actually move the style bracket up if you move it around, but like what you'll probably find if you're working on larger components is you'll want to put the style at the bottom.
Yeah.
And there might be a way of forcing. Whoops. There might be a way of forcing Prettier to do that. We just haven't really. Yeah. It hasn't been enough of an issue for us to fix it. So for now, this will be following the standard layout.
Right. So, like in your usual project, of course, you can have like declarations that you use in your HTML. So let's say we have a paragraph equal to this is a, let's say Svelte blocks. Just gonna rename this for later. Yeah. Then you're gonna have just bracket it. Thing. There you go. So right. Get rid of this. Good.
Maybe we should zoom in like one step. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it's probably better. Okay. Right. So now let's make a to-do list. To-do app. For that, of course, we need a list first thing. So we need it mutable because we're changing it. Let's call it a to-do list, and let's get some examples in there to show it, because we're not going to use local storage in this. Don't have time, so let's get some examples. Good practice is always to have key value pairs. You don't always need it, especially with something this simple, but we're actually going to use it later. So let's do it anyway. You have the text, and this is item 1. And then you have different objects where the text is item 2. There you go. This is 2 things to do, apparently. How do we render these in Svelte? Normally, you might do some mapping. We don't actually need that in Svelte. It has an implicit HTML like logical syntax, and as you can see, there's both if and also asynchronous stuff. What we want is the each. So each list, which is our to-do list, as let's just call that item.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can use that as a variable. No, actually, let's just do the input, because we could do that as a paragraph, but we want to show you something very cool, so we're going to do it as an input. So we set the item, the value to the item.
Text.
Yeah.
Because we
set
set up the text in already. Yeah.
And also to close it. There we go.
Yeah.
Right. So now it initiates the input elements with the value from the array.
Yeah.
But you do something even cooler, because of course now it's very useful to like correct spelling errors and all that. So you can change it because it's an input field. But this is not the first entry in the array. This is just the value of the input field. But we can fix that, because in Svelte we have something called bind. We can bind the value. You can bind the stuff pertaining to the specific tag, and since this is an input, it has a value, and we can bind that. Probably do type text. Just a good measure. So now the value of this input field is bound to this value, meaning the text value of each entry in the array to-do list. Meaning, not only is it called a two-way bind, which is called that because not only is the value bound to the entry of the array when you change it, this is now the value of the array, the value of
the object entry in the array.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little unclear with this, but we'll have a slightly clearer example. But it basically allows us to bind variables and things to one another, so that any change that happens is shared between whatever sort of 2 constants are holding onto this item.
Exactly, and it does that in real time for every change, meaning that for every keystroke that I do, it updates the value in the array.
Yeah.
Which is very cool, very, very useful. So
add a header.
Yes, let's
put a
let's have a
list at the top.
Oh. There we go.
I just like it to look pretty.
That's fine.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've got a start. We've got an array with some items in it, and they're bound to one another, but we need to be able to add and remove stuff now. So we can make some relatively straightforward JavaScript functions to allow us to add and remove things from the array, from the list, really.
Yeah.
And as we do that, you'll see a couple of the other sort of properties of Svelte coming out. So yeah.
Right. We should probably first get a something where you could have an input, and forms are cool. So let's get a form. In the form, we'll have inputs. One is type text. Go. One is course type submit. There we go. Now we can also bind this because it's very cool. We can bind it to a variable like state. Let's call that new item.
So we need to declare that item.
Yep. Let's just make it an empty string.
Yeah, so that has to be an empty string there, because actually if new item was any different, we would see text in there already when we start, and you'll see how that matches when we do add to list. But basically right now it's going to display an empty string in that area. But if you put the placeholder text, it still works. So
you can do placeholder equal to add a to do.
Let's see how that looks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So add to do. Cool. And of course, just mentioning, if this was because it's a two-way bind, this actually has it's the value of what you instantiated. So I can actually modify this. It's not placeholder. This is a value.
Yeah.
So let's remove that. Okay. Cool.
And you'll see why that it works this way in a minute when we do the after things.
Now we have the input. Now we need to tell it what function to run. And the cool thing about Svelte is, of course, the syntax is a little bit different. It's that on colon and then the event. The event is submit. Now, the cool thing about Svelte is normally you might want to stop propagation and prevent default and all that, and you would do that in the function, right? You do that with the event in the function. But in Svelte, you can actually just pass it as a sort of a flag, if that makes sense. In the form tag, there's also other stuff like once to make sure that it's only run once, which you would normally do with probably like a bit complicated Boolean magic, but let's just get prevent default. You can change these, so you can get more. So it listens for the submit event, stops, it prevents default, then it runs this function, which is called
add to list.
It's not capturing it. Add to a list. Don't need to call it, just pass it along. Right. So now we need to add it. And what we are adding is this value. So we already bound it to this input field. So we don't actually need to pass it on as an event value or anything. We can just go to do list equals, and then we'll destructure it, spread notation to do list and the new item. So of course our structure is this key value pair and then new item. There you go.
Yeah.
That's just it. There you go.
Yeah. But now, as you can see, if you just click back real quick, because you went away from it very quickly. But what happens is that new item is being updated each time. But when he made it, each time he's added a new symbol, it's just gotten longer. So if you delete this and go back to just write 12 again, like, yeah. So new item is always whatever is in that field. But right now the field isn't being cleared each time we hit enter.
Right.
So we can now just declare a new item as an empty string again.
Yeah, there you go.
And what you'll notice is if we look at the front end again, now it clears it and puts in the placeholder text afterwards.
Yeah. Right. So let's also have something to remove them, because otherwise the to-do list is not it's not going to be very nice looking at if you can't do anything. So should probably have a button.
Yep.
In here, and let's just make an X. And again, on making a basically making an event listener, the click event, and we'll just find that we just pass in remove from list. Now we're gonna need to call this because of the way we're gonna write it. We need to call it on the index. And then of course we'll need to make it a callback function. Okay. Of course, now we need to actually get the index. Like a typical JavaScript for each loop, you can call this in the each block, which is very, very useful. Just need to write that. Then it'll pass on the index to the each element. So now we have an index. We need to remove it. We're gonna use the splice, because splicing is nice, splicing is neat, and pass in the index, and you just need to remove one element. Now this is one of Svelte's I hope temporary shortcomings, because of the way it does reactivity. It doesn't actually update the array. It's kind of hard to explain. Just take our word for it. Documentation says more. But when we do this, when we do something like splicing, pushing, popping, you can also do it manually. But when you call these functions, you need to reassign this to itself.
Yeah.
Which is a quick fix. So it's not a big thing. It's more of a, it feels a bit weird, but it's not really a problem.
Yeah. Our low level, at least my low level understanding right now, based on like the tutorial, is that Svelte's reactivity is based on sort of kind of on assignments, and so if when the array changes internally, it doesn't register any change because it's looking for an assignment. So, or at least that an assignment is the most obvious way that Svelte notices that there is a change. So in this way, we're forcing it to say, hey, take a look at the to-do list. It might have changed by reassigning it to itself.
Yeah.
There's some funky behavior with Svelte and arrays right now, which as Bjorn said, hopefully in time they will clean up. But now you can see we're getting close to something that works.
Cool. Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk about reactive declarations.
Yes.
To do this, we're just gonna add a quick checked value to this thing, and put type checkbox, and then we have this check value of this input that we can also bind, not just the value. So we bind checked to, and then we need to bind to something. So what we're going to bind it to is this is why we needed the key value pair structure, item.checked, and let's make this a Boolean. So text is something, and checked checked is essentially as false. There you go.
Yeah, so essentially we're adding another variable to each item that tells us whether or not it's checked. And now we can create a reactive statement that, and we're tying that value to whether or not, using the double bind, we're tying that value to whether or not the checkbox has been ticked off.
Yeah.
And in so doing, we can then start to write some reactive statements.
Yeah.
That you'll see in a minute.
Yeah, so just for fun, we might want to know how many tasks have been completed, because, you know, just in case you can't count. Now, reactive declarations is done with, this is actually JavaScript syntax. There's nothing magical or Svelte about this, just uses it in a very clever way. So when you do $: it has an implicit let. So when you want to make create a variable that is reactive, you go $: and then the variables. You don't need the let. So let's call this completed tasks. Right. Now, how we count these? Just a simple filter where we have item dot checked look for. So if that's true, we know that it's done. And I'm just going to count it with length. Now we have this is sees how many of these are checked off.
Yeah, and essentially, just by definition, what that line of code is doing is Svelte interprets this line, this $sign, to mean rerun this code whenever any of the referenced values change. So basically, whenever anything in this after the assignment statement happens, whenever that value change, it wants to rerun this line. So in this case, we kind of only have two values, one value being assigned to another. But if there was a longer statement where it was, multiply x by y by z, if z were to change, it would rerun the line of code each time to get us a new value, right?
Exactly.
And that allows us to create like very reactive systems with very little code, which is pretty nifty. And Svelte, I keep saying React. Svelte looks out for that for us using these reactive statements.
Yes, it's basically like React's use effect, but arguably more sexy. Mm-hmm. So so let's see. There we go. 3, 4. Yep, like that.
Yeah. So now you can see it figures out each time whenever a new thing is checked.
There's quite a lot of useful stuff in Svelte, but we don't have time for it. So we're just going to quickly touch on transitions.
Yeah.
Because
we're actually doing good for time.
It's so useful. Mm-hmm. So let's do one on these.
Or maybe we should show a component first, and then we can do the transitions.
Sure.
As a cherry on top.
Let's show a component first. Do you want to make this item into a component?
I think let's just do something simple, and then we can show, just so we can show how you can place another component inside this.
Sure. So let's make a component.
So like React, you're going to build Svelte. I mean, that seems to be the rage with frameworks now. You're going to build Svelte applications out of multiple components. The components in React really don't operate all that much differently from those in Svelte. Sorry, don't operate all that much differently from those in React.
Yeah.
You use the structure, but instead we're going to export the variables in this up to its parent components, which Bjorn will demonstrate.
Yeah. So instead of passing on a prop, you create the prop in the child component and then let the parent component define it or set it or declare it, whatever. So let's have the thing here. And then we import it just as you would in React. There we go. Of course, in React you have .js endings, so you don't need to write the ending. In Svelte, you do need to write the ending because it's a Svelte file, not a JS file. Right. Let's make one of these. This component. And of course, this is undefined because it's not made. What you can do is you can have default props, which you can also do in React, but this is quite more simple. So you can have a default prop like this, right? And how you export the prop is just like in React. You have thing equal to Then let's use the thing from before. That's why I'm calling it a thing. And that'll work. Now, very cool thing about Svelte that you don't have from React is when the variable is called the same thing, you actually don't need to assign it. You can just do it like this.
Just plug it in.
So, yeah. So the thing is up here. It's what called. Plug it in. There you go.
Yeah.
Svelte rules.
It's a small thing, I guess. But Svelte has, what we found as we've used Svelte is that there's a lot of these little shortcuts that just help reduce the amount of time writing code, which is nice. Like, and they a lot of them feel very clever, which is also fun.
Yes.
So yeah.
Exactly. Right. So let's show animations and transitions.
Mm-hmm.
You need to import these, which makes sense. And let's have a fade and scale transitions. Let's have flip. There's a documentation for these on the website.
Yeah, and this is very much a bonus. We just think they're really fun.
Yeah, they're really fun.
I'm sure there are libraries like this in other frameworks, but at least these ones that are part of Svelte are pretty straightforward to use, and they're a good time. So we thought we'd just show them off.
Yeah. So let's do it on the whole thing, because otherwise we're a bit weird. And so transitions. You're gonna have an in and an out transition. This is syntax like this. And let's do in. Let's do scale. And then you pass it, because the first one is for code. The next bracket is the object. You pass it on object, and you can do duration, you can do delay, you can do all sorts of stuff. Again, documentation for that. No, let's do one. What's that? 1 sec. So that's it. You can also do delay, but let's.
You made a typo here. It's out. Out. Just
embarrassing. Okay.
There you go.
So out. Let's fade on out, because that's cool. And let's do 2000 on this one. Needs to be objects. There we go. What is it saying? Fade is not.
Fade is not defined.
Fade.
Fade.
Sure. Okay. There we go. And just for fun, let's also do let's check this. Yeah, this is not very useful. What it can do, because it's an array, a useful thing is to animate and then do that flip thing where you flip it. Duration, let's also do that 2000. Now to animate, you need, as it says, it needs to be keyed each block, which gets a bit technical, but how you do that is you get the index of the item. Again, it's a bit technical, but it is in documentation why and how this works. So it's it's very cool. Fly in and on out, which is sort of let's do 500. Oh, that's okay.
We have those components at the bottom.
Yeah, you can do animations for those.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do 100. Like those flying things.
Yeah.
Right, but you can fiddle with all this.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. This is a bit, it's very much a bonus. But yeah, there's some really cool stuff in just the current Svelte libraries that has been really fun to play around with. And yeah, I think is there anything else?
No. This is like the basics.
Yeah. So some of the stuff like reactive statements and so on, there's a lot of really cool things you can do with it. It doesn't really have that much use here in this like simple of a to-do list. So there might be some other examples we can show you, but we also have a more developed version of this to-do list that we could share as well. And that has a little more stuff going on, a little more complicated components and some other features, like the ability to delete all checked objects and so on.
Yeah.
So, but that was a bit too big for this. So yeah, that's the basic Svelte to-do list.
Yep.
Cool.